In 2026, forensic scientists made a discovery that would unravel a conspiracy hidden in plain sight for years. One tiny piece of moss. That's all it took to expose a grave-robbing scheme worth millions of dollars. And it happened in Illinois, at a cemetery where families thought their loved ones were resting in peace. This is the story of how a plant exposed the darkest betrayal of grieving families. It starts with a question. How well do you really know what's happening in your cemetery? For decades, families in central Illinois trusted one thing above all else. When they buried their loved ones, those graves were sacred, protected, final. But in 2024, cemetery workers made a shocking discovery. Graves that were supposed to be occupied were empty. The caskets were gone. The bodies were gone. Someone had been digging them up. What they found next would change everything. As investigators dug deeper, they uncovered evidence of something far worse than simple grave desecration. This was organized. This was deliberate. This was profitable. Cemetery workers had been systematically exhuming graves and reselling the burial plots to new families. Fresh graves on top of old bones. They'd been collecting money from grieving families twice over. Thousands of dollars per plot. Some families had paid $50,000 or more for what they believed was their loved one's final resting place. The conspiracy involved at least 7 workers across 3 cemetery locations. They kept meticulous records. They knew exactly which graves were old enough that nobody would notice. They knew which families had moved away or lost touch with the cemetery. They targeted the vulnerable. Now comes the part that seems almost impossible. How do you prove a grave's been disturbed decades after the fact? Soil tests showed disturbance. Ground-penetrating radar showed empty spaces where caskets should be. But the real breakthrough came from something smaller. Moss. Forensic botanists collected moss samples from the disturbed soil. They identified the species, Arctic moss, a slow-growing plant that only thrives in certain conditions. By analyzing the chlorophyll levels and growth patterns, scientists could estimate exactly when the soil had been turned over. The moss didn't lie. The disturbance matched the dates when families reported missing records. It matched the dates when workers had been assigned to those sections. DNA analysis of the surrounding soil provided even more evidence. Particles of clothing, hair samples, traces of the original caskets. All of it linked specific dates to specific locations on the cemetery grounds. The conspiracy unraveled. Workers confessed to moving at least 400 graves. 400 families had unknowingly purchased plots over desecrated ground. The financial impact was staggering. Families sued for emotional distress. Some demanded the graves be relocated. Others wanted their money back. The lawsuits totaled over $8 million. Several workers faced felony charges for wire fraud, theft, and abuse of a dead body. The cemetery director was charged with criminal conspiracy. He faced up to 20 years in prison. But here's what haunts this story. Most families never knew. Many still don't. The cemetery settled quietly. Records were sealed. The names of 400 families weren't publicly released to protect their privacy. Which means there are 400 people walking around right now, visiting what they think is their grandmother's grave, or their child's grave, not knowing the truth beneath the soil. What this scandal revealed is something darker than the crime itself. It showed how easy it is to exploit the dead when we're too grief-stricken to ask questions. It showed how trust, once broken, can never be fully repaired. A tiny piece of moss helped bring criminals to justice, but it couldn't undo the betrayal. Couldn't give those 400 families back their peace of mind. Sometimes the darkest chapters of history aren't written in ink. They're written in soil, and it takes science, determination, and a little bit of luck to uncover them.